The sun is tilted by 6 degrees with respect to the plane of the planets. The reason for the non-zero solar obliquity has been a mystery since it was first discovered by Sir Richard Carrington in the mid-1800s. It turns out that Planet 9 can actually tilt the sun.
The fact that the sun is tilted, even if it's only by 6 degrees, the fact that the sun is tilted, the sun is the most massive thing in our solar system by a huge margin, and it's oriented differently than everything else in the solar system. That is an incredibly strange phenomenon for which there really have not been that many explanations even attempted over the last 150 years. It's naturally explained by Planet 9 being exactly where we think Planet 9 is, which it's one of these mysteries that we think is now solved, that's been such a mystery that people haven't even really talked about it very much over the last 150 years because it's just been so difficult to think of why it is.
It has been known since the mid-1800s that the sun is tilted. Over the years, people have put forth various explanations for it. One possibility is that the sun was interacting with the protoplanetary disk via magnetic fields. It's also possible that the disk was just asymmetrical from the beginning. And it's also possible that the sun actually had a stellar companion a long time ago.
It was a moment of inspiration. Not all projects start out this way. Not all results really come. Some of them come, it slowly dawns on you. We were sitting in Constantine's office one afternoon, and we were actually thinking about a different problem entirely, which is how Planet 9 would interact with these very distant objects in the Kuiper belt that made us originally think that Planet 9 was there. And in just a moment, as we're thinking about it, and we're doing this with our hands, trying to think of directions things are going, I think we both realized at about the same time. It's like, oh, it's going to make the sun look tilted too. And it was very clear from the way we did our fingers that it was going to make an effect. What we didn't know until we did the calculations was how much of an effect was it going to have and in what direction was it going to go. But we knew it had to do something.
Planet 9 has been scattered out into the distant solar system. So because it has an orbital period that's so long, it has an enormous amount of angular momentum, right? As much almost as the rest of the solar system combined. So even though as an object it is not as massive as Jupiter, it has a huge lever bar. Okay? And using that lever bar, it can effectively torque the rest of the disk of the solar system by 6 degrees over the age of the sun.
Next, always next on our list is find the planet. We think we have it narrowed down to a pretty small patch in the sky that we have to look at. Small patch in the sky still means we need many, many nights on the telescope. We're pretty convinced that by maybe the end of next winter, we will have been able to cover enough sky that we'll actually be able to find it. When we find it, we both show that this hypothesis has been correct, we learn about it, but we also see how much of the sun, how it should have tilted the sun too, and see if this is the only thing that's been tilting the sun or if other things are around doing it. When we looked at the outer solar system, we realized that while most of the very distant objects, these objects beyond Neptune, beyond Pluto, most of these objects, they all go around the sun and they're all sort of pointing off in all different directions. But the most distant objects all swing out in one direction in a very strange way that shouldn't happen. And we realized that the only way we could get them to all swing in one direction is if there is a massive planet also very distant in the solar system, keeping them in place while they all go around the sun. And we started looking at this and thinking, this must be either a coincidence or it's caused by something else. It can't be caused by a planet because that's crazy. There are no planets out there. I went from trying very hard to be skeptical that what we were talking about was true to suddenly thinking, oh, this actually might even be true.
So the object itself likely is more massive than the Earth, probably a little bit less massive than Neptune. It sits right in between that terrestrial to giant icy planet range. Its orbit unlike the orbits of the known planets, is not nearly circular and planar. Instead, it is exceptionally wide, 20 times bigger than the orbit of Neptune. The orbital period of the Earth is, of course, 1 year. Right? The orbital period of Jupiter, the big player in our solar system, is about 10 years. The orbital period of this putative ninth planet is 20,000 years.
We have nothing like it in the solar system, so it's new for us. It is, however, the most common mass of planets that have been found around all of the other stars. People have always looked at all these other planets in this strange mass range and said, wow, I wonder what these are. I don't know what these are because we don't have anything like it in the solar system. Looks like maybe we do. I'm really hoping that as we announce this, people start a worldwide search to go find this ninth planet.
Again, solar stream is coming from the right. That's where the sun is. All the plasma in the blue is being blown backwards. That's a part of our protective shield here. 2 hours missing, 5:37, exactly the same time. Everything goes haywire. Come up to that point again. Everything's coming from the right. Bam. Now the black lines are our field lines. That's our magnetic field lines. Very important. They have now bent backwards at this point. People have talked about Planet X, Nibiru, Planet 7. If there's an object coming in, would it have orbiting planets? Would it have debris with it?
So this is some stuff that piqued my curiosity that I'm sharing with you here. All of this stuff will be linked. I suggest you go to the Caltech thing and watch the whole video. But anyways, I'm going to try and get through this quickly for you. Planet X to really cause mass extinction this month. This is April 9th, 2016. We're going to come down here. Thanks to science, we know that the larger the celestial body, the bigger its gravity, and consequently its ability to affect other, smaller bodies around it. We've known of Jupiter's crucial role in protecting us from asteroids for quite some time now, but the mysterious Nibiru could very well do the opposite, and some say there's good reason to believe it. We're going to come down here. A retired astrophysics professor from the University of Louisiana, Daniel Whitmire, is saying Nibiru has all but arrived to our neck of the woods, and that the destruction brought about by its gravitational trickery will take place this very April, as it's done numerous times before. Then we're going to come down here. Earlier this year, we started seeing space anomalies manifesting in a small group of objects, which have been taking on a peculiar orbit. Only something 10 times the size of the Earth, as theorized with Nibiru, could influence celestial objects in such a way, according to a study from Caltech. The anomaly was picked up on in the Kuiper Belt, which stretches all the way past Neptune, and it resurrected a 100-year debate. And then we're going to come over here, because again, this stuff just piqued my curiosity, and I wanted to share it with you. This is fire officials' reclaim report of possible meteor strike in Bowie. This is Bowie, Maryland. This was on April 25th, 2016. And we're going to come down here where this was put out by the Bowie Volunteer Fire Department. Possible meteorite strike behind Scarlet Oak Terrace causing a massive brush fire. And then we're going to come up here and see that when firefighters made it to the site, there was a large pit, which was 12 to 15 feet wide by 5 to 6 feet deep. And the fire spread to adjacent trees and brush and took approximately 15 firefighters 4 hours to extinguish. But again, they came out and said, nope, that should have never been put out. The post should have never listed a meteorite as the cause. Okay. Okay, so now we're coming over here. Was it a meteor? Solving the mystery of New Jersey's tsunami buoy. April 25th, 2016. A tsunami warning device about 200 miles off the coast of New Jersey went into event mode over the weekend, but there were no giant waves threatening the shore. There was speculation that the drop could have been triggered by a meteor because the Lyrid meteor showers were active during the weekend. There also was speculation a submarine could have struck the buoy. So again, this stuff just piqued my curiosity, want to share. We're going to move here. Okay, so now here we are, coast to coast. This was from March 30th, 2016. In the first half of the show, retired investigative researcher Bob Fletcher talked about his contention that a rogue Planet X or Nibiru is coming our way and the disastrous effects it could have for Earth. He first became suspicious that something was afoot when he discovered that massive amounts of money were being funneled out of the government and the Federal Reserve. He concluded that these funds were surreptitiously used for the construction and stocking of underground facilities that will house the elite and members of the New World Order while the arrival of Planet X wreaks cataclysms upon the planet's surface. According to his sources, the knowledge of Planet X dates as far back as 1983. So again, I was just like, well, that's interesting. And so we're coming over here because I remembered hearing about Rumsfeld talking about the missing $2.3 trillion that they couldn't track on September 10th. And we all know what happened on September 11th, 2001. Nobody was talking about the missing money. So I Googled just to see, and there was this one, which brought me over here. So here we are, debunked. Rumsfeld says 2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon. In 2001, Donald Rumsfeld said, according to some estimates, we cannot track 2.3 trillion in transactions. This has been misinterpreted by many people as 2.3 trillion actually going missing. However, it's really just about the way the money was accounted for. So here's the original source. Go look at it for yourself, right? Okay. Oh, well, golly gee. Page not found. Okay, well, there was another link, right? Here, we can also see this. Huh. No input file specified, but yes, there was. So again, this was something, this has gone long, but it really, really piqued my curiosity. And I wanted to share it because, again, trying to put the pieces together. Here we are. He first became suspicious that something was afoot when he discovered that massive amounts of money were being funneled out of the government. And then, I don't know. This just made me go, that's interesting.
What we have discovered is that numerous features of the Kuiper Belt, a field of icy debris beyond the orbit of Neptune, can be understood if the solar system possesses an additional ninth planet that resides well beyond the orbits of the known planets.
When we looked at the outer solar system, we realized that while most of the very distant objects, these objects beyond Neptune, beyond Pluto, most of these objects, they all go around the sun and they're all sort of pointing off in all different directions. But the most distant objects all swing out in one direction in a very strange way that shouldn't happen. And we realized that the only way we could get them to all swing in one direction is if there is a massive planet also very distant in the solar system, keeping them in place while they all go around the sun. And we started looking at this and thinking, this must be either a coincidence or it's caused by something else. It can't be caused by a planet because that's crazy. There are no planets out there. I went from trying very hard to be skeptical that what we were talking about was true to suddenly thinking, oh, this actually might even be true.
So the object itself likely is more massive than the Earth, probably a little bit less massive than Neptune. It sits right in between that terrestrial to giant icy planet range. Its orbit, unlike the orbits of the known planets, is not nearly circular and planar. Instead, it is exceptionally wide, 20 times bigger than the orbit of Neptune. The orbital period of the Earth is, of course, 1 year. Right? The orbital period of Jupiter, the big player in our solar system, is about 10 years. The orbital period of this putative ninth planet is 20,000 years.
We have nothing like it in the solar system, so it's new for us. It is, however, the most common mass of planets that have been found around all of the other stars. People have always looked at all these other planets in this strange mass range and said, wow, I wonder what these are. I don't know what these are because we don't have anything like it in the solar system. Looks like maybe we do. There are many telescopes on the Earth that actually have a chance of being able to find it. And I think that many people will be inspired to use their telescopes. I'm really hoping that as we announce this, people start a worldwide search to go find this ninth planet.
History shows us that it's a bad idea to consistently say we have now reached the end of the solar system and there's nothing beyond what we already know.
And all those people who are mad that Pluto is no longer a planet can be thrilled to know that there's a real planet out there still to be found.
Hace unos días la NASA anunció oficialmente el descubrimiento del llamado noveno planeta. para algunos reconocido como Hercóbulus, Nibiru o Planeta X. Como usted sabe, el primer registro de él aparece en tablas sumerias de más de 5.000, 6.000 años de antigüedad. Y hasta el día de hoy había sido una leyenda. Hoy sabemos que efectivamente existe un cuerpo masivo, muy grande, muy posiblemente del tamaño de los grandes planetas de nuestro sistema solar, que tiene una órbita alrededor del Sol, se dice de 20.000 años. Todavía hay mucho que aprender y de saber de este misterio, ya que hasta el día de hoy no se le ha logrado fotografiar. Aquí le presento la investigación de Fernando Correa.
Un equipo de astrónomos afirman tener evidencias de la existencia del noveno planeta. Nadie lo ha observado. Sin embargo, se ha logrado determinar que se localizaría 20 veces más lejos que Neptuno. Sería entre 10 y 20 veces más grande que la Tierra. Se piensa que es muy oscuro y que tiene una órbita muy alargada, dando una vuelta al Sol cada 20.000 años. Estos cálculos son posibles gracias a las observaciones de las órbitas de 14 planetoides más allá de Neptuno, en el cinturón de Kuiper. La posición, dirección y órbitas de estos planetoides no se pueden entender a menos que exista un enorme planeta muy masivo que determinaría la posición de los planetoides. Sería el quinto en tamaño después de Júpiter, Saturno, Urano y Neptuno. Esta es la investigación del noveno planeta que está siendo relacionado con el llamado planeta oscuro, conocido como Nibiru o Hercolobus, el planeta bíblico. El 20 de enero del 2016, astrónomos del Caltech de Estados Unidos, Mike Brown y Konstantin Batygin, anunciaron que tenían evidencias de la existencia real del noveno planeta.
What we have discovered is that numerous features of the Kuiper Belt, a field of icy debris beyond the orbit of Neptune, can be understood if the solar system possesses an additional ninth planet that resides well beyond the orbits of the known planets.
De manera que el campo gravitacional y la dirección de las órbitas de los planetoides en el cinturón de Kuiper se explican por la existencia de un noveno planeta. Mike Brown en 2003 descubrió el planetoide Sedna. En 2005, los planetoides Eris y Makemake. Y en 2016 explica por qué existe el noveno planeta.
When we looked at the outer solar system, we realized that while most of the very distant objects, these objects beyond Neptune, beyond Pluto, most of these objects, they all go around the sun and they're all sort of pointing off in all different directions. But the most distant objects all swing out in one direction in a very strange way that shouldn't happen. And we realized that the only way we could get them to all swing in one direction is if there is a massive planet also very distant in the solar system, keeping them in place while they all go around the sun.
Aunque existen evidencias de la existencia del noveno planeta, aún no ha sido observado. Sin embargo, ya se está buscando con los mayores telescopios del mundo. Se calcula deberá ser observado los próximos 5 años. La confirmación de su descubrimiento seguramente resolverá el enigma del planeta oscuro llamado Nibiru o Hercolobus, el planeta bíblico conocido como Ajenjo, un planeta que se describe en la tablilla de Berlín de las crónicas de los sumerios. El noveno planeta está siendo relacionado con Nibiru en una investigación que continuará. Informó Fernando Correa.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Wednesday, the 11th day of July, year of our Lord 2012. Welcome to the John Moore Show. I did get a call yesterday from a private trusted source. A very disturbing call that I've been pondering how to report this to you since I got it mid-morning yesterday. And I've decided the best thing to do is just to, well, tell it like it is and not hold back, except to protect my source, of course. Well, here's what's going on. The U.S. military in the last week has begun conducting briefings for dependent military families, the husbands and wives of men and women in the military. These would be the dependents that are stationed on near the East Coast, the Atlantic Ocean, near the West Coast, the Pacific Ocean, and near the Gulf Coast. At these briefings, they're being told the following, that there's this planetary-sized object called Nibiru that's coming into our solar system. It's going to be causing very severe problems, much more so than it already is, very soon. And that they're being put on standby to bug out. They're being told that there'll be little notice, possibly 2 weeks or so, before they're given the notice to bug out. Oh, they're also, by the way, they're being shown a map at these briefings. And they're signing non-disclose agreements before they go into the briefings, before the briefings begin, agreeing to not disclose to anybody else what they're learning. Anyway, at these briefings, these people are being told that when the call comes, they will only be able to take basically what you would take if you were flying on a commercial airline, a carry-on bag and one check bag with family photographs, personal important papers, documents, and whatever clothes you can fit in. End of story. And they have to abandon all their other clothing, personal possessions, furniture, appliances, automobiles, all the rest of it. Well, the automobiles, I'm not sure. They might be bugging out in personal vehicles. That's unclear to me. And it's probably going to be a mixed bag of how people make their way away from these coastlines. I was talking to Tim Spencer about this and my friend Command Sergeant Major Page, both of whom are veterans of the U.S. military. And the agreement between the three of us was that these kinds of briefings would not take place a year in advance. They would not take place 6 months in advance. 4 to 6 weeks is probably pretty likely. Probably not more than 3 or 4 months. So that's our belief. I hope we're wrong. I hope that this turns out to be incorrect information. If it is, well, that's great. If it's not, if it turns out to be correct, then you've got your heads up. So I asked the question this morning to all of you out there, to the several thousand of you listening to me on the morning of July 11th, 2012. What would you do if you had 6 years to prepare? What would you do if you had 6 months to prepare? What would you do if you had 6 weeks to prepare? There's going to be different answers to those 3 different questions, aren't there? 6 weeks is a possibility. I hope it's wrong. I truly, in my heart of hearts, hope that that is wrong. I know that at some point that we will get warnings like this that are viable and will be the real deal. And unfortunately, I think this may be it. I don't know. I hope it is not. My source will be, I'll be talking to my source on a weekly basis for the foreseeable future, for probably several months into the future, probably till the end of this year, most likely. We're going to be getting to know each other real well and communicating as we track this thing and see where it goes. My source doesn't want to hear this either. I mean, we're both mature men. We're both Vietnam vets, and he has a life he's put together for himself and his family that he doesn't want to see disrupted. I have a life I've put together for myself and my family I would just soon not see disrupted. But reality is, well, it is what it is. And when we get the call, when we get the call about the bug out, I will report it the next show I'm on the air. Anyway, my source told me about this dependent. My source is not the dependent, by the way. The dependent was looking at my map and saying that my map was very close to the map that the dependent was shown at the briefing. Very close. As we say, as Tim Spencer would say, close enough for government work. There's going to be deviations between the map that I recreated working with the 3 Navy veterans and the map the government is showing. However, it is close enough. Knowing if Aunt Nellie's house is going to be underwater in South Carolina really is not the issue. No, it's not. The issue is the Atlantic coast, Pacific coast, and Gulf Coast will all be underwater, 50 miles inland, 75 miles inland, 100 miles, depending on where it is, wiping out the regions, the homes, the businesses, the schools, the hospitals, where about half this population in the United States live, work, and play, including Washington, D.C., New York, Baltimore, Miami. It's a long list of major cities. That's the point. Not whether Aunt Nellie's house is going to be underwater in South Carolina. That's not really the issue. People that live near the Atlantic coast, Pacific coast, Gulf Coast, I've had these conversations dozens of times the last 10 years. They want to go to a map, they want to look at my map and see if their house or if Aunt Nellie's house is going to be underwater. That's not the point. It's human nature, you're going to try to do that, I know that. That's not the point. The briefings I'm getting from my confidential source have the ring of truth to them. They do. And I will do everything I need to do to protect my source, make sure my source remains confidential. In fact, the original source does not even know that they are a source. That's how we've kept this confidential. They don't even know they're a source. But that's a good thing. That protects them also. Searching for a date, searching for a time frame is something, it's human nature. I get these inquiries all the time whenever I have these conversations with groups of people or individuals. When's this going to happen, John? Well, I still don't know. I know I'm reporting as much as I know right now. As my friend Professor McCanney would say, and he published this in his book, a lady was asking him about a time frame, and his response was, well, ma'am, if I give you a date, what are you going to do? Buy another case of tuna fish? I think that's almost a word-for-word quotation there. Last-minute preparations means getting down to prioritizing, making a list of priorities, making sure you have the things that the essentials that you absolutely must have. Your water filter, your food supply, medical supplies, communications equipment, whatever, boots and hats and gloves, fuel stored up, seeds for your gardens, hopefully a safe haven. That would be a really, really good thing, a safe haven where you can live and be safe and grow your own food away from a major metropolitan area at a good altitude with a decent growing season, plenty of water, and so forth. If you don't have a safe haven, I would urge you to secure one. I think that would be one of the highest priorities a person could and should have, is securing a safe haven for themselves and the people they care about. These next few months between now and October. Do we have 6 weeks, 8, 12? I don't know how many weeks we've got. Maybe we got 120 weeks. Make your list of priorities and work the top priority first, then number 2, and then number 3, and so forth. You can work on 2 or 3 priorities at the same time, by the way. You don't have to limit yourself to one at a time. When Dr. Deagle, it's been, 4 years ago now, asked me to make a a top 10 list of things for preparedness. It instantly struck me as something very essential, an excellent exercise. I had not done it before. So I put together my top 10 list. And Dr. Deagle and I have talked about that several dozen times the last few years on the Friday afternoon show on Genesis, Dr. Deagle's third hour. As you regular listeners know that hear me on Dr. Deagle, I do get to talk a little bit. At some point, my source will let me know, and I will let you know. We have a caller on hold here, Linda in Ohio. Good morning, Linda.
Hi, John. I just got my new video, so I needed to ask you. And thank you for updating, because I have new listeners listening in, and so they haven't heard any of this information before. So I know you think it's repetition, but
well, coming into this cold can be quite a shock, to say the least. But go ahead, Linda.
I understand. Are the lakes being affected? I live about 30 miles away from Lake Erie.
Right. Or
just the ocean.
The larger the body of water, the more it's going to have there's going to be problems. What's your altitude above sea level, Linda?
I used to know, but I've been going to work in and out so much I can't remember anymore, but I will find out. Okay.
Well, Google Earth, you can find the altitude of any place above sea level, any place on the planet with Google Earth.
Okay.
And how far away from the Atlantic Ocean are you?
Oh, I'm in Ohio.
Oh, you're in Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay, well, you're far enough inland. You got mountains between you and the ocean. You're probably going to be okay. I'd want to be some altitude above Lake Erie, maybe 100 feet or so, because there's going to be a lot of things other than just the oceans coming out of their basins. There'll be 200-mile-an-hour winds. There'll be earthquakes. There'll be a lot of meteors hitting our dear old planet here. But as far as Lake Erie is concerned, I would just want to be maybe 100 feet or so above the lake level, just for a bit of a margin of safety. What's the nearest city that you're near, Linda, and how far are you from it?
The nearest big city is Cleveland.
Yes.
Cleveland.
And how far are you from Cleveland?
Oh, about, I'd say 75 miles.
Okay, well, that's not as far away as I'd like to see, but it's not too bad. You live in a fairly small town?
Yes.
Okay. Well, these small towns, is there a lot of agriculture in your area? Farming, ranching?
Yes, there is, as a matter of fact.
Okay. All right. Well, people involved in agriculture tend to be fairly independent. It's just part of their lifestyle. Most of these men that have these tractors and farm equipment, they take great pride in being able to repair and maintain almost everything on their equipment without any outside help. So you've got in your neighborhood a lot of very independent people who are used to taking care of themselves. That's a real good thing, Linda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, thank you for the information. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Here's a top 10 list. I put this together for Dr. Deagle. It looks like September 3rd, 2010. And number one, at least 2 gravity feed, high-quality gravity feed, Berkey water filters. I do offer them for sale on my website. You don't want anything that takes electricity or pressure to work your water filter. Number 2, at least one 30-caliber rifle and 500 rounds of ammunition for each adult. Of course, these skills and to go with that, owning a weapon of any kind. Number 3, cast iron cook pots and skillets with cast iron lids. They can be used indoors. They can be used on campfires and will last for decades if properly cared for. You need a truck or a large van, preferably diesel, so that you can carry people and supplies and equipment. Number 5, heavy canvas tents or tarpaulins for emergency shelter for yourself or for unexpected guests. Number 6, 900 pounds of grain per person per year, at least a 2-year supply of grain per person. Properly stored so that when the weevils hatch out, and there's weevil larvae in all bulk grains, so that they can't live. You can store it in nitrogen, in carbon dioxide, in a vacuum. There's different ways to do that. And number 7, a comprehensive medical kit, same kind of kit that the paramedics use, and of course the skills to go with it. A good place to get a professional grade paramedic kit is Galls, Galls, Galls.com. They have the same things that the paramedics use because they sell to the paramedics. Number 8, heavy leather high-top boots. This is kind of a generic way of saying buy your boots, trousers, jackets, gloves, hats at the same place the farmers and construction workers buy their clothing and boots. Not the cheap, lightweight stuff sold at sporting goods stores that won't last. That's meant for casual, recreational use. Much of the things they sell at places like Walmart simply aren't durable enough, especially the boots and shoes. I've never seen a pair of boots and shoes at Walmart that I would put any trust in for long-term heavy use. Number 9, vacuum-packed heritage garden seeds. It kind of speaks for itself. You're going to be growing your own food, maybe growing in a little bit extra food so you have something to trade or sell. Number 10, a copy of the book entitled Dare to Prepare. Dare to Prepare by Holly Deyo, D-E-Y-O, available at Stan and Holly's website, standeyo.com. The 3 additional items we put on this list for Dr. Deagle. Number 1 is the paratrooper bicycle. It's the only, as far as we know, the only full-size folding mountain bike. It is military issue to the U.S. Army paratroopers and the U.S. Marines. Next would be a hand crank AM/FM weather band radio. I do offer these for sale at my website. It's also got a built-in flashlight and a cell phone charger. So it's a pretty good little unit, very compact and just a great little unit. And next would, and last but not least, a radiation detector with a gamma ray spectrometer. Radiation is part of what we're dealing with here, of course. This Fukushima event is by far and away far worse than what happened at Chernobyl in Russia more than 20 years ago. Far worse. So that's the list. As Linda pointed out, Linda from Ohio a few minutes ago, we always have new listeners. Being exposed to this material for the first time can be quite shocking. A lot of people, it's so far away from their belief system that they simply outright reject it, and I expect that. That's why I go back frequently to the fact, and it is a fact, scientifically provable fact, and I've got some of the evidence at my website, that 2 years ago last month, it was June 12th, 2010, the Gulf Stream stopped. This is one of the many effects of the 10th planet, or Nibiru, on our planet, and they're secondary effects. It's not a direct effect, it's a secondary effect. Back in 1979, when the scientists with our government and the various world governments, once they satisfied themselves that Nibiru was real and where it was located with the Pioneer 10 space probe, they began making their preparations, part of continuity of government contingency planning. They also developed their cover story. The goal of our government and the world governments is to keep everybody going to work Monday through Friday, paying their mortgages, being distracted with professional sports and other things, to the last minute. And I think they'll be 97, 98% successful in that effort because of their Loctite grip on mass media. So the cover story they developed was that there's going to be something called human-created climate change, human-created global warming. That's the cover story that they decided on in 1979. It's not just a fantasy put out by Al Gore. Al Gore is the most visible spokesman, but this is the storyline put out by NASA and NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and the National Aeronautical and Space Administration, that human beings and human activity is creating greenhouse gases, which in turn is warming the planet. That's a complete fabrication, a complete fantasy. And even little children can tell you about carbon footprints now and how we should all have a smaller carbon footprint. What a bunch of malarkey that is, as my friend Lucas would say. But they've been wildly successful in obfuscation and confusing the issues, convincing people that things are something other than what they really are, and they will continue to be. In the meantime, if you become a student of my work, a student of Professor McCanny, a student of Immanuel Velikovsky, Zechariah Sitchin, and others, you can learn the truth. The truth is, what we're experiencing is cyclical in nature. It's a long cycle, 3,600 years, and in human lifetime, that's a lot of lifetimes, 3,600 years. You figure 4 generations per century times 36 centuries, that's a lot of that's a lot of generations. The cyclical nature of this planet going away from us for 1,800 years and coming back towards us for 1,800 years in a binary star system. I get emails from all kinds of people claiming they have photographs, claiming this, claiming that. It's natural to want to see this thing. 12 years ago, when I found out about it, more than 12 years ago, I began that quest myself. I came to realize it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if I see a photograph of it or not. Eventually, I will see photographs that are authentic, and so will you. Eventually, we'll see the real deal here in the Northern Hemisphere. By then, we'll be down to the final few months, if not a few weeks or days, before all hell breaks loose. I encourage you to, now don't get caught up in a quest trying to find a photograph of the 10th planet of Nibiru. It's pointless. It serves no purpose. What you need to do is educate yourself about this cycle where every 3,600 years, every civilization on the planet gets mashed down to the mud. Lucas told that story quite well in his first DVD. It's mainstream archaeology, by the way. Very mainstream archaeology. And they offer no explanation. Mainstream archaeology offers no explanation for all the civilizations on Earth 3,600 years ago collapsing, coming to a halt. They don't. I know why. And when you educate yourself, you will know why as well. It's very important that you educate yourself. Take the time to do the serious reading necessary. And it's going to take a lot of reading. You know, watching the 4 hours of my DVD is a good start, but that's all it is. At the end of my second disc, I give a fairly extensive bibliography of books that you can use to educate yourself. It's probably 20 to 30,000 pages worth of reading. Oh yeah, I'm quite serious here. There's a lot to learn. If you think you can have a comprehensive understanding of these matters by watching a 4-hour lecture that I put together, well, you're sadly wrong. That's just a beginning point. That's just a teaser. This is all that is. And I would urge you not to make major life decisions and major changes in career or where you live, the part of the country you live, based only on watching my 4-hour lecture. I think you need to do more homework than that. I stand behind what's in my lecture. I document what's in my lecture. And it's solid. If it wasn't solid, I would have been hammered into the ground long ago. This first disc came out in the first week of September 2008. That's be 4 years ago this September. The second disc came out just a little over a year ago. So no, what I have there is very real and very provable. I offer some of the evidence there at my website with the U.S. Navy images of the Gulf Stream before it stopped and the Navy images of the Gulf Stream after it stopped, which of course is where we are right now. The Gulf Stream having stopped and its effect on the ocean current and weather is why we're experiencing the unprecedented heat here in North America. There is no precedent. We have weather records going back to about the 1880s in much of the country. This is the hottest year ever recorded in the 130 years or so of record keeping. Unprecedented. And what will happen in the future in terms of weather, I can't tell you. I think I can tell you with some certainty that it will be worse. It will have more frequent, more bizarre, and more dangerous weather events. Extremes of drought and extremes of too much rain. Extremes of high temperatures, extremes of low temperatures. Days where we have 200 and 300 tornadoes in one day. Who ever heard of such a thing? 200 and 300 tornadoes in one day. Earthquakes in places that have never had earthquakes. As you see these things increase, become daily events, you'll know, because I've told you so, you'll know that we're getting closer to the end. The end being when Nibiru, the 10th planet, the destroyer, impacts us to the point where we have a tilt of the Earth's axis, and these oceans come out of their basins. That's what's going to cause the worldwide flooding. A tilt, what's called a pole shift. I can't tell you how many degrees it'll be. It's probably going to be in the range of 15 to 20 degrees, something like that. That may not sound like much. That is huge. That is massive. Poles don't need to flip 180 degrees. They don't have to flip 90 degrees. A 15 or 20 degree shift in the poles would be enough to cause coastal flooding on all continents. That's all it would take. And when I use the word all it will take here, that's a massive, massive thing. They have something the size of our Earth tilt its axis 15 or 20 degrees. One of the difficulties I had putting this whole thing together was that the Navy veterans I was debriefing, they were sitting in the folding chairs getting the information. They were not the scientists who put the information together. So the Navy veterans were told what would happen. They were not told why it would happen or how. They were told these oceans would come out of their basins. They weren't told what would precipitate that, what would make this happen. I had to find that out myself. That's when I found out there was a bulge of water at the equator, not quite 500 feet above sea level, being measured at Cornwall, England, held in place by gravity and rotation of the Earth. Anything that disrupts where true north is, disrupts the rotation of the Earth, will disrupt that bulge of water, which is hundreds of thousands of cubic miles of water, north and south of the equator, going north and south more than 1,000 miles each direction. That's a massive bulge of water. And once that water is disrupted, and if you're near a coastal area, well, baby, watch out. You're going to be underwater. One of my consultation clients down in Texas, he's about 80 miles from the Gulf Coast. I arrive at his home, and I'm about to get out of the Suburban. I look down and I see sand and seashells. All the ground, everywhere, the entire region there, sand and seashells. I looked him straight in the eye and I said, this used to be under the ocean. He got kind of quiet because his wife was standing there, and he had not told his wife yet. And he said, yes, John, it was. Much of East Texas used to be under the ocean. Even areas 80 and 100 miles from the ocean, where the ocean is now, used to be under the ocean. And those are our seashells. They're not the fossils of seashells. They are the seashells. So it wasn't millions and millions of years ago. They're just plain old seashells like you'd find next to any ocean right now. Have been laying there for about 3,600 years. So this is your wake-up call, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I started out the show with a warning. I'm going to wrap it up with the same warning because I know there's people that can't tune in the entire show. One of my trusted, private, confidential sources tells me that military dependents that are stationed with their spouses on the Atlantic coast, Pacific coast, and Gulf coast are now attending briefings. They have to sign non-disclosure agreements, briefings that they could soon get a bug-out order where they would be ordered to leave these coastal areas, taking only the equivalent of a carry-on bag and one suitcase, abandoning everything else. They may get as much as 2 weeks' notice before they get this order. They may not get 2 weeks' notice. This notice would probably, we believe, be given sometime in the next 4 to 8 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. We don't know. It's not the kind of thing that would be given a year in advance or 6 months in advance, anywhere from a month to maybe 3 months out, maybe as far out as October. A lot of speculation about what may or may not happen in October. So we got part of July, all of August, September, and in October. It'd be October in about 3 months. Close enough. So that's your heads up. That is your heads up. That these briefings are being conducted. They're telling these people that the planet Nibiru is going to be causing flooding of all coastal areas worldwide. They're being shown a map that's very similar to the map in my DVD, Global Warming, what the government is telling you, the map that I recreated with the help of 3 Navy veterans who saw the classified map the U.S. Navy displayed at their briefings going back to 1979. This is your heads up. Whatever you need to do to make your list of priorities, start working on it for your preparations, you need to be doing it. Time is of the essence. Time is of the essence. There's going to be some things similar in a lot of these lists and some things different. You all have our own situation to deal with. You know what your situation is. Just do it. I do private consultations, by the way, details at my website, thelibertyman.com. If you need some help gaining some clarity and focus as to what you're doing, I'll be glad to do that for you and with you. Hopefully this will blow over. We'll get through this fall, get past the fall elections, and life will be grand, and we can enjoy a joyous Christmas season where we celebrate the birth of our Lord Jesus and celebrate January 1st, 2013 with no major problems. I really, sincerely hope and pray that is what happens. I would not be carrying out my duty as a journalist, however, if I held back this information from you. I have a duty and a responsibility as a journalist, which I am, an investigative journalist, to put this information out. What you do with it is up to you. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. You all be safe out there. Buy lots of ammunition. Never give up your guns. The code words for today, for those of you behind enemy lines, turn to page 156, first paragraph. Page 156, first paragraph. Be safe and buy lots of ammunition.
And thank you for feeding.
In this program, we're going to give you a detailed analysis of AMS Meteor Observation Report data. Let's get started with yearly trends. At Yowza.com, what we're tracking are fireball reports, those big ugly rocks that fly through the sky and make the evening news. And this year started with an interesting twist, so to speak. So let's get caught up. The AMS reporting data presented in our first program in this series, Planet X 101, Who, What, When, Where, Why, and How, was through to October 2013. In this program, we'll update that to include the first quarter of 2014. So let's get started. Here we see the complete actuals for all of 2013. Based on those 2013 actuals, here are the monthly estimates for 2014. Now let's see how the 2014 estimates compare with the first quarter of 2014. In January, the estimate is spot on. The actual for January is consistent with the estimate based on the prior year actual. However, in February, we see a drop, not only from the estimate, but from the February 2013 actual as well. Again in March, we see the same thing as February. The actual is below the estimate as well as the prior year actual. So what could account for this? First off, we're not talking about meteor showers like the Perseids, which many of us enjoy watching on warm August nights. Rather, we're tracking fireballs such as the one observed over Japan in January of this year. Large, solitary rocks that come screaming out of the heavens. With that in mind, here is one explanation for the first quarter drop in fireball observation reports. As we've reported, we're tracking an approaching second sun in our system. Astronomers have named it Nemesis. It is the core of what we refer to as the Planet X system. Nemesis is a brown dwarf companion to Sol, with its own planets and rings as well. To illustrate one explanation for the drop in the 2014 first quarter fireball observations, let's use this illustration of the rings of Saturn as the backdrop for our example. In this case, the data could be telling us that Earth is now between the bands. Therefore, we do not really know what is coming next. Another bigger band? Or could it be over? With either scenario, the terms coincidence and natural variability come to mind. They did for us, and for that reason, we dug hard into the data. And here is what we found. Let's assume that the brown dwarf at the core of the Planet X system is like the other massive objects in our solar system, in that it is also surrounded by rings. So, are we encountering those rings? If so, how would it be expressed in the data? Let's see. For the purpose of this study, we're going to use a line graph instead of a bar chart. And here we are starting with the 2013 to 2014 actuals based on current AMS reporting data. Using this data, we can project through to the end of 2015, and this shows a steady uptick. Then when we extend the projection out to 2016, we see an even greater uptick happening. And finally, when we go to the end of the projection in January 2017, the trend does appear ominous. With this in mind, let's see where the Chelyabinsk super bolide that detonated over Russia on February 15, 2013 fits into this picture. Here we have added the Chelyabinsk super bolide to our previous timeline. What it shows is that there has been a steady uptick in actuals since that event. However, when we expand the timeline to cover the period 2009 through January 2017, this is when we really begin to get a sense of what is happening. This is not coincidence, nor is it natural variability. And if you're living along a coastline, you should be concerned. Now let's take a look at multi-state observations. The interesting thing about the Chelyabinsk super bolide that detonated in the skies over Russia last year was that it came right out of the sun. And so both the Russian air defense system and NASA were completely blindsided. This is why we take a special interest in multi-state fireball reports, as these tend to be large fireballs or super bolides with shallow trajectories such as the Chelyabinsk super bolide. It's not uncommon to see reports coming in from 3 or 4 states for these large fireballs, or in some cases 2 or more countries. So let's see what the data tells us. Here we see the updated actuals for all of 2013, which tracks closely with the yearly trends we saw before. Using those actuals, we were able to project estimates for 2014. So let's see how the estimates compare with the first quarter of this year. In January, we're seeing that the estimate and the actual are spot on. While the February actual is well below the estimate, it's not that far off from the 2013 actual for February. And in March of this year, we see that the actual is on par with February, but significantly lower than the actual for 2013 as well as the estimate for this year. But if you think we're out of the woods, don't draw that conclusion in haste. Not until you see what we have next. The AMS data set is very rich with many different types of data. But the one that really gets our attention the most are called huge events. In the first program in this series, Planet X 101, Who, What, When, Where, Why, and How, we introduced viewers to the AMS classification system, where mid-sized events get 6 to 20 reports, significant events get 21 to 50, and large events get 51 to 100. Huge events get 100 plus reports. The huge classification is usually reserved for the biggest, brightest, and noisiest space rocks. These are the ones we need to worry about, so let's take a look at the trend data. Here we see the actuals for 2013, and the first thing we can't help but notice is that it's a bit spotty. Then, using the general trend projection, we created 2014 estimates for huge events. So let's see how the estimates fit with the actuals so far for this year. With January of this year, what we now see is a reverse in the earlier trend data for the first quarter, which shows several reporting types with lower values. Then in February, a surprise. Since there were no prior year actuals for this classification, we could not make a prediction. Nonetheless, there were 2 huge events in February. It's also interesting to note that there were no huge events in March. So was February a fluke? We wondered about that ourselves. But as we were finalizing our study, a huge event occurred in April. Like February of this year, there was no estimate because there was no prior year actual. So while we are seeing a downward trend for the first quarter and the earlier categories we showed you, what we're seeing with the huge classification is anomalous and disturbing. To help put this in context, we're now going to present the 2 most significant trends in this report. We're now going to show you the 2 most significant trends, huge events and multi-state events. we are going to use 2013 actuals for multi-state events and huge events to set a baseline for this comparison. And here we see the addition of the 2014 estimates, which track closely with the 2013 actuals. With this in mind, we are going to see how the first quarter of 2014 compares with the 2013 actuals and 2014 estimates. Here we see that January 2014 is right on track with the 2013 estimate for multi-state events, but a little higher for huge events. For multi-state events in February 2014, we see a drop below the 2013 actual level. However, huge events are still significantly above 2013 actuals and 2014 estimates. In March, we see the downward trend for multi-state events has leveled out a bit. But on the other hand, it has plummeted in terms of huge events. Once again, we factor in the late reporting data for huge events in April of 2014, and we see an uptick that does rise above the 2013 actuals and the 2014 estimates, while at the same time, we're seeing a virtual flat line on multi-state events. In terms of similar reporting outside the U.S., we did not find any sources as competent or as thorough as the American Meteor Society. But this is what we did piece together. There was no significant reporting of fireballs until September 2013. Since then, we've been able to follow two principal areas. In Europe, we're seeing multi-country reports that span all the way across Europe, over the UK, and some even as far as Ireland. In Oceania, we're seeing multi-country reports that span the distance from New Zealand to Australia. These observations are based on the timestamps of the reports. Given that 71% of the surface of our planet is covered by oceans, we believe that unless these trends dramatically reverse themselves this year, there is a high likelihood of a deep impact event in our near future. This was a key factor in my own decision to bust a move from the Santa Cruz area of California to Reno, Nevada. Now, for those of you living along a coastline, I hope you take the information presented in this program to heart, and that you do the same. And just remember, every day of procrastination is one less day of survival options. And I'll leave it on that note. So until the next time we meet, remember Marshall's motto, destiny comes to those who listen and fate finds the rest. So learn what you can learn, do what you can do, and never give up hope. This is Marshall, and I'll catch you on the backside.